The Seattle Seahawks finally got their offensive coordinator hired. So now what should they do with DK Metcalf and Geno Smith? Welcome back to another episode of the Seattle Sports Show, where we love Seattle pro sports. Today, we are here to talk about what the Seahawks should do with DK Metcalf and Geno Smith. All right, this is a question that is looming large on everybody's mind this offseason. What are the Seahawks going to do? What should the Seahawks do with DK Metcalf and Geno Smith? They have their new offensive coordinator hired. Do they fit the system? Does he like them? Is it worth it to trade them for what you're going to get back and start over anew? Those are a lot of questions that people have on their minds, and I'm going to tell you what I think. Right? But before we get into what we should do, what I think we should do with Geno Smith and DK Metcalf, let's talk about some of the other players on this team and what I believe they should do and what I think is most likely to happen with a lot of these players. Because, of course, when we're talking about what the team is going to do, everybody is always going to bring up the cap space and how much cap space do we have and how much cap space do we need to create and how are we going to sign re-sign players or sign free agents to come in and help. Right now the Seahawks are $27.5 million over the cap, so why would we talk about extending Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, and possibly others? They don't have the money to do it. How would we talk about signing free agents? They don't have the money to do it. Well, let's take a quick look at how they're going to make this happen, and they can make it happen pretty quickly. Right off the top here, Tyler Lockett. He's set to make $30 million. That is not going to fly with his age and production, and with DK Metcalf and JSN, both firmly ahead of him on the depth chart now. Tyler Lockett is the third receiver, so you're not going to pay him number one, like all-star Pro Bowl receiver money. He's just not making that anymore. You can cut him. You're going to save $17 million right off the top. It's going to be about $14 million against the dead cap, but you're saving $17 million. So Tyler Lockett, I think, will get cut because of the savings you can get and the production that he can bring you, and how you can replace that production throughout the draft or in free agency at a much cheaper rate than this. So, boom, you're cutting Tyler Lockett, and I guess I should say, obviously, if the Seahawks can, as I go through the list here of players I think they should cut, obviously, if they can trade any of them and get some sort of value out of them from another team, they should. But I'm going through players here who are most likely cut candidates because you're not going to get the value for them that you're looking for, or maybe nothing because other teams know that they can just wait, and that the Seahawks, because they are $27 million over the cap, they are going to be forced to make moves. So other teams can sit and wait. Their hands aren't going to be forced. So it's most likely that the outcome for these players is that they will be cut, so that the other teams can try to get them at a cheaper rate than what their contracts currently are. Because again, that's why the Seahawks are cutting them. Their contracts are too much for what they're bringing. And another player that is true for, unfortunately, is Draymond Jones. when he is on the field and healthy, what he brings is great. It's amazing. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Draymond Jones, he's usually on the field and healthy, right? But what he's bringing us is definitely not worth a $25 million cap hit. He has not lived up to expectations when he came over in that Russell Wilson trade. And, though he is still young, you're not getting that kind of production out of him for what he's making. So you got to cut him. You're saving $11.5 million. Yeah, you got the dead cap again. It's going against you, but you need to get under the cap. You need to get into that savings. All right, so you cut him. Boom, you're already in the positive. Just those two moves right there, you have $1 million in cap space. Now, before when I was jumping ahead of myself, this is where I wanted to get to. Uchenna Nwosu. When he's on the field, he's usually great. When he's healthy, he's usually great. But unfortunately, the last couple of years, that has just not been the case. He's injured every year. He's missing a ton of games. When he's on the field, yeah, he brings you some great run protection. He really helps solidify that defensive line when he's in there, but it's not in there often enough, and especially at the cap hit that he's taking and the savings that you can get. So you're going to save $8 million. You're cutting Uchenna Nwosu. I mean, he's only getting older, right? So it's not like, the projection is that he's not going to all of a sudden start getting healthier and be able to stay on the field even more. That's just not the way things go. So now we're at $9 million in cap space. Another guy that I think just, again, not worth it for the contract extension that they gave him. It blew my mind when they gave him this extension in the first place. And already I think we've seen that he's not going to live up to that sort of expectation. The offense that's coming in, could he fit in it? Yeah, he could fit in it. He could do well in it. For what he's shown you that he has so far, also coming over in that Russell Wilson trade, you're not, it's not. You've had a couple of years to see what he brings, and it's just not enough. Again, don't even know why you got the contract extension in the first place. So you got to cut Noah Fant. Again, another one, you're saving almost $9 million. So now you're over $18 million in cap space with 4 moves. Okay. Now, another guy, he just got passed on the depth chart. Had an injury. Not that he's a bad player. But again, because of the savings you can get, this is a business. You got to try to improve this team. And we already have a player better than him. You can go get production behind him that is going to be cheaper with the savings you're going to get. And so you're going to cut Rayshawn Jenkins, saving a little bit over $5 million. We are now at $23 million in cap space. Now, another guy that came over, they really did help us in the middle of the season, but again, with the age, the savings, no dead money involved in this one at all. You can cut, you can save, you can maybe even bring them back at a cheaper rate, and again, it'll cost you nothing because there's just going to be no dead money against the cap. You are going to cut Roy Robertson Harris. I really liked that move when it was made. It did prove to be a good move, but if you can save $6 million, over $6 million, you save it, see if you'd like to come back at a cheaper rate at, like a vet minimum deal, or see if you can replace him with, again, with a cheaper deal or through the draft or, whatever means necessary. But you're going to save over $6 million. So now we're looking at basically $30 million, $29.9 million in cap space. All right. And then let's see here. Again, when I'm looking here, I'm thinking, okay, the age, the production factor. I can get much cheaper through the draft, or just through hopefully the players that I have on my team developing so that they can step up and be the backups. We got to cut George Fant. You're saving $3.8 million. That's the move to make, in my opinion. So now we make all those moves. We're at 33.7 million in cap space. That'll do it. I mean, everybody else on this team, they're on much cheaper deals. A lot of them still on rookie contracts or just like minimum deals. So you're keeping them around to develop them, and any players at that point who aren't good enough to make your team, you'll cut them in, and it's not going to cost you anything, and you'll have savings. So there could be other little moves in here that players that they decide that they didn't like that they get cut, but nothing of significance that we need to cover here. Basically, we're at $33 million in cap space now, making just a few major moves, and then that just leaves you what you need to do with Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. All right, again, a few options that you could do. The first options for both of them that you are absolutely not going to do is straight out cut them. There's no reason why you would cut Geno Smith or DK Metcalf, other than the cap savings. But these are both players that you absolutely could trade, because both of these players have value to other teams, and significant enough value that you would get something worth it in a trade, and that teams know that you have them under contract and that they're still valuable enough that the Seahawks wouldn't just cut them to save the money. That's not going to be in any sort of reality. So if teams did want to, they would have to trade for them. If you traded just Geno, that's $31 million in cap space that you're saving. That is going to get you to $64 million in cap space in total. Pete Carroll, he has signed to one of my other all-time favorite teams. From the time I was like 3 years old, I was a fan of the Raiders. I just love the color, love that logo, and yeah, pretty cool that my favorite coach of all time has now coached my two favorite teams of all time. And he could want to come and get a quarterback that he is familiar with, somebody who he knows still has a ton of ability that could help him turn around a franchise, in just a couple of years, because that is what he's aiming to do. That Raiders organization, I don't think they're anywhere near becoming a Super Bowl team, but they need to build that culture. They need to build a winning culture and mindset in that organization, something that they have not had for over 20 years. Trust me, again, as a lifelong Raiders fan, I know that. I have followed the Seahawks and the Raiders my entire life, and the last time they kind of went back and forth, right? I remember being a kid in the 90s. Seahawks weren't any good, but the Raiders were good up until the early 2000s, right? And then right after the early 2000s, I think it was 2002 when the Raiders went to the Super Bowl. Right after that, they have just been horrible ever since. And then the Seahawks, thankfully, started doing good at it, so I didn't have to watch two bad teams. The Seahawks started doing good, obviously going to a Super Bowl and then winning the Super Bowl. The Seahawks have that winning culture that Pete Carroll built here. The Raiders want to build it. They could do that with Geno Smith, and Pete Carroll could be looking to do that. So that is a possible trade. Now, I don't know what you're going to get for Geno Smith. Maybe you can get a second or third round pick, but it is a a possibility. It could be something that the Seahawks do, whether they just decide, hey, we need to move on from Geno. Maybe Clint Kubiak says, Geno is not the guy for what I want to do. I can't imagine him saying that, though, because I think Geno is the guy for what he wants to do and the type of offense he runs. But it could be possible that he says, I see enough in Sam Howell that we should just start over, or I see enough in one of these quarterbacks that we can get in the draft that we can trade Geno, save that cap space, get a rookie on a rookie contract, and start building around this guy and the future. That is a possibility. So you could do that. So that is if you just trade Geno, you got 64 in cap space. Okay, we'll undo that for now. If we just trade DK, all right, here we go. If we just trade DK, again, you're saving just $10 million. You're going to end up with 21 million against the cap. But if you do trade him before the June 1st deadline, then you get all that cap space that you'll have for the for free agency. Okay, so this could land you any number of possibilities. Any number of teams could be wanting to trade for DK Metcalf. So many teams that were in the playoffs this year that maybe they feel like they're just missing that X factor weapon, and DK could be that for them. That's what they want to help get them over the hump and get into the Super Bowl. That could be, an option. So this is a realistic option to trade DK Metcalf. Again, you're saving the money. You're hoping that JSN just steps up into being that number one receiver, and then now you're looking at, because either way, whether you trade him or not, I think they're cutting Tyler. So if they cut Tyler, this would be in addition to cutting Tyler. You'd be losing both of those receivers, and then again you have twice as much production to make up in the offseason, whether it's through the draft, whatever other might be coming back in trades, or whatever you can do in free agency. So that is a possibility. If you traded both of them, you could do that. Then you're looking at $75 million in cap space. And then again, that'd be a situation where the Seahawks are saying, okay, we have the quarterback, we have Sam Howell. Somehow Clint Kubiak is comfortable with that, or there's somebody in the draft he sees that he's comfortable with moving on from Geno because they see that they could go draft this guy. It's obviously not going to be Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward because they're not going to be able to move up to get that. Don't know if those guys are worth moving all that way up for anyways. But maybe it's somebody like Jackson Dart is the name that everybody is saying is jumping up the boards. And, he's got a lot of raw talent. So I could see that. So maybe Clint Kubiak would say that and say, yeah, I'm comfortable with moving on from Geno. Let's make that. And then also say, yeah, I'm comfortable with moving on from DK Metcalf as well, because I have a plan for JSN, and I know some guys that we can get in free agency, and some other guys I like in the draft that we can go ahead and go get, and I think I'll be able to plug them in, and we'll still be flying. Now, I don't think that is the case. What I think is the most what I think is the best idea for the Seahawks to do, and what they should do, I think they should be renegotiating a contract with both of these players, and try to extend this window. I think the Seahawks are in a window of playoff contention right now, and potentially Super Bowl contention. They just have some dire needs, mostly on the offensive line, right? And then some depth around the rest of the roster, depth at cornerback, depth at obviously depth on the defensive line, depth at linebacker. Those things need to get addressed as well. With the cap space that you have before extending Geno and DK, you have 33 million. That's what you're looking at doing with that cap space. You're looking out, getting those depth players for your defensive line, for your linebackers, and then hopefully making a big splash with an offensive lineman. I don't think you need to make, you need to wholesale replace everybody, but they need to make one big move. Go get one Pro Bowl All-Star, level lineman. If it's Trey Smith, if you're plucking him away from the Chiefs and you need to pay him $22 million a year, do it. Get him on the offensive line. All right, get him in here. Somebody like that. I don't want to see another Lincoln Tomlinson or players like that trying to come in here and make this team. Go out, get us a solidified offensive lineman to, make this offensive line function, because right now it doesn't function. So you're gonna do that. All right. So if you did that. Again, and if I say you're gonna sign him for $20 million, then that's taking up most of your cap space there. That's why I say you need to renegotiate with Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. And again, this is a risk you take. Okay, I think they are in a window to compete right now. They just need. They really need to improve that offensive line so that they can make that happen. So the risk is, because I've heard, again, various radio hosts say that, like, oh, but if you just keep DK Metcalf and Geno Smith, that's not really taking any risk. That's just standing pat. And is that a good idea? No, I think it is a risk, because to make this happen, to free up cap space, you are going to risk a little bit of your future, at least a couple years of your future. I would give Geno Smith a 2-year contract extension. I would give DK Metcalf a 3-year contract extension, trying to free up. Let's say I give DK Metcalf, I give Geno Smith that contract extension, right? So he's got a non-prorated bonus of $16 million right now. I'm telling Geno Smith, hey, I know you have that $16 million that you earn. We're still going to guarantee that to you, but we're going to take it away. We're going to take $16 million off your cap hit this year. We'll put it into a signing bonus for next year so that you're guaranteed to get it, or over the next 2 years, so you're guaranteed to get it. So you're getting that money, but that's going to help us significantly reduce the cap hit that you have, giving us a $16 million to go sign. Again, more offensive, maybe one that's going to be $60 million towards the big offensive lineman that is going to help him play better anyways. Right? So that's how I would go about that extension, is letting him know, hey, yeah, we're taking that $16 million this year. Don't worry. We'll work it in over the next 2 years, plus whatever the base salary is going to be over the next 2 years. So over the next 2 years, he probably will be coming in at, $40 to $50 million in cap space. So you are taking the risk of saying that this is good enough right now. He's good enough right now, and the rest of the team will be good enough right now to win now. And if we don't win in the next 2 to 3 years, then, well, really the next 2 years, then you're looking at that third year, that cap hit, and doing the same thing with DK Metcalf. then you're looking at, again, 2-3 years down the line, you know, having some big cap hits against your salary cap and trying to figure that out, and then at that point, really looking at blowing the team up, because you'll have wasted a few years of not competing. If it doesn't work and you don't and you end up not competing, then that's the risk, is that you wasted a couple years with Geno and DK while not getting the rest of the team younger when you could have. But I think you take the risk to have that open window now. You also give an extension to DK. Again, maybe with him, you're not going to be saving like 16 million off the cap. Maybe you save like 10 million or so off the cap this year from DK. But again, you're working that over the next 3 years of his contract. And I'm assuming that he's be getting a large contract, somewhere around 30 million a year. So again, you're looking at, a couple years down the line, you're thinking, okay, this isn't gonna be feasible. You would have to cut Geno, DK. You're looking at like, oh, how are we gonna re-sign anybody? Type of deal. And again, at that point, you really are starting over, but it will have been worth it, in my opinion, for these next 2 to 3 years to compete while this little window is open. Because look, San Francisco was really down this year. I don't think Arizona's really getting better, or gonna get better, as long as they're keeping my goodness, their quarterback. I don't know why all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank, but with that quarterback, they're not competing for the division, I don't think. The Rams, they really seem like they got younger this year. They're starting to retool, but how much longer can they keep some of their big name players on offense around with the kind of deals that they have, and how long is Matthew Stafford have left to be productive at the level that he's getting paid at? So that's why I think there's a window right now. Again, if you add that 16 million from Geno Smith into the cap space, then you're looking at 50 million. And then again, if you, like I said, if you save 10 million off the cap this year from DK, then we're looking at we're looking at 60 million in cap space. Again, yeah, you're going to spend 20, somewhere between 20 and 25 of that on your offensive line. One of those players hopefully being like all pro level guard. And then after that, you still have 40 million to play with, again, to really get some depth on your defensive line, to really get some depth at your linebackers position, because they'll re-sign Ernest Jones. That money will be factored in there, that with the 40 million that you have left. They obviously have Knight on his rookie deal still. Those are going to be the two linebackers. You got to sign some quality depth behind them in case there's injuries, or just whenever you need them in there. So that will happen, but they'll be, even after signing like an all-pro guard, you'd still have plenty of money to do that with, and still plenty of money to sign your 9 rookies with the 9 picks that they have coming in the draft. All right, so that's what I would do with DK Metcalf and Geno Smith, and that would be my plan for what to do with the rest of these players this offseason going into the draft. And with that said, we'll be talking about the draft soon. Now that you kind of see what my plan is for the rest of the team this offseason before we get into the draft, I will start doing my mock draft series very soon. And that, this, we're going to do it just like last year. I'm going to do them multiple times a week. I think with my work schedule and the commute that I have now that they moved our building, I think I won't be able to do it every day like I was doing last year, like Monday through Friday, but I'm going to try to do it as often as possible. We're going to do as many as possible before the draft. And we're going to, because when we start now, the draft board is going to get moved around a lot. We're going to like players more than others throughout this process, and things might get moved around. But we'll see. Again, we'll get a chance to look at a bunch of players throughout this draft that we will like, that we would potentially like on the Seahawks, just like we did last year. And you could see, a lot of the players that I liked last year doing well. Like I said, I only ended up giving the Seahawks a B+ last year for their draft. And then you look around at players like a Jared Verse, a Dominic Pooney, just a lot of players throughout the draft that you look at and say, oh, it sure would have been nice to have those guys too. So we're going to do that again this year. We're going to take a look at a lot of potential players that we like and why they would be a fit for the Seahawks and why they are good enough to be on the Seahawks. So get ready for that. And that'll be the end of this episode. Let's end this one just by saying thanks for listening to the Seattle Sports Show, where we watch legends awaken. So take cover, because with the Sea of Sound, you will see us rise to reign supreme and win forever.